through the day, our bodies and our nervous systems are just constantly activated. And I speak to clients about, at the end of such a day where you've just given and given and given, what does it mean to take time for yourself? And most of them talk about watching maybe a show or doom scrolling. And a lot of their go-to activities are about consuming content. And I tell them, can we look at other ways of me time that don't involve consumption but involve release and expression in some way that allows it to come out of your system?
Hello and welcome to Your Heart's Content,
a show where we try to analyze the parts of content that really matter.
We talk to musicians, artists, illustrators, designers, stand-up comics,
Folks in the business of content, all in a bid to try and understand this space of content a little better
and how you could benefit from it.
In this episode, we speak to two very dear friends of mine, Mani and Shweta. Mani and Shweta run a website. It's actually a platform called the MindClan. Check it out at themindclan.com. The MindClan is a resource for mental health in India. It's got a curation of therapists. It's got support groups and a whole bunch of other text and video and interactive resources. I was very keen to speak to somebody in the space of mental health for everything that we're doing over here at this show and the 6% Club, because I do believe that there is a big intersection between content and mental health from two angles. One, of course, just the sheer therapeutic effects of creating content, which is something Utsav and I highly espouse on the 6% Club. And two, of course, the other extreme, which is the burnout that comes from expectations of social media likes, so on and so forth. Between these two topics, we cover a whole bunch of things, dive into our own hypotheses, and think about content in many, many different kinds of ways. We talk about the evolution of the internet and content creators, what that entire thing means, and a whole bunch more. This was, again, a very warm, insightful, and of course, at times, very funny conversation as well. So, our chat with the guys from the MindClan, Mani and Shweta, right after this.
Thank you, both of you, for coming here today. And I think if anyone has been following this show, expecting both of you, and I will introduce you in a bit, but expecting both of you to come on this show is not the most, not the most expected thing for it to happen. But here we are. And what I want to really talk about is something which is increasingly becoming important in the sense of people realizing it is important. I would always say that it was always important, but maybe the realization has sort of, come in. And for me, it's interesting because while we think of the space of, largely what is called mental health as something which is becoming a little more mainstream, at least amongst the people who can, one, afford some of these services and have realized that need that they probably need it. But from the perspective of being a creator, right, there are so many of these stories of, top creators burning out, having issues, not being able to deal with what they have somehow found themselves thrust into. A lot of conversations around content don't revolve around mental health, right? And that's some of the things which I really wanted to, speak to you about. But at the risk of ill-explaining what you guys do, could you please tell us about MindClan and what do you guys do?
Because that in many ways is a content project by itself. So,
100%. Yeah. You want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Shweta. I am a practicing psychologist. And I come with about 8 years of experience in working with people in therapy. And I run the MindClan.com with my co-founder Mani, who's also my partner. I'll let him introduce himself, but a little bit about the MindClan. It's an online platform where we curate and list inclusive mental health services across India for anyone who is in need. So we have listed therapists, support groups, workshops on mental health, even blog articles and other kinds of resources, helplines as well. So the idea is that at any point, if someone in their mental health journey has understood that, okay, my mental health is important, I have to take care of it. Now what? Where do I go? Who do I trust? Then hopefully the MindClan can be an answer to that, where it's an ecosystem of various resources that they can access. Even if, say, therapy is not accessible for any reason, we would want the person to at least experience some safe space, say in the form of a support group or a workshop even, or even if they decide to read an article about what is mental health, that still counts as a first step. So that's largely what we do.
Satisfied user of the site. Thank you for helping me find my therapist. No.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the idea of the platform also comes.
You have to
from the fact-
introduce yourself first.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
My name is Mani. I am the co-founder of the MindClan.com. And I primarily look at tech. I build the platform. I'm mostly on the back end. And my biggest motivation in building the platform was when you look at mental health in itself. Now, let's assume that with every growing day, the stigma around mental health will only get lesser. Mm-hmm. But still, everybody only talks about mental health awareness. Nobody talks about awareness around how to get the right form of support. Mm-hmm. So, if I were to have a rash, I don't really care if my doctor is sexist, racist, bigotry. Treat my rash and never seeing you again. Mm-hmm. But my mental health support options have to be better than that. Mm. Like if I am pro-choice, I want my therapist to be pro-choice. If I am someone who prefers having community support, if I feel like at this point of time I'm feeling lonely, I don't really think I'm finding peers who are getting this experience that I'm going through. At that point, a support group might be really helpful. And when we started the platform in 2018, everybody came to us and they were like, oh, but can you do a mental health awareness workshop? We are like, no. Awareness is there. We are here to help you figure out what to
the
do
next step after that.
And the platform started. The platform had its own journey. Like you said, it's a content platform of its own. With every day building the platform, we added new verticals, we built new things. We launched exercises a few months ago because we again felt that if you are a user of therapy and you are told by a therapist to try and exercise out, that entire process is very different. They will send you a PDF, they will send you a YouTube video, they'll send you a bunch of things which in this day and age you might not really find accessible. Like if you try working out to a YouTube video, that itself is hard because you're like, do I listen to you? Do I look at you? Or do I enact what's happening? And I feel the same thing was happening to mental health exercises as well. So that's something that we decided to just make completely enabled through the platform.
Nice.
So you just press a few buttons, it guides you exactly how to do it. And in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an exercise is done. So we've been experimenting a lot. We started off with therapy, became support groups, helplines. And the bigger story here is the fact that when right now, if you want to seek access to mental health support, your only option, if you don't know a platform like ours exists, is to reach out to a loved one and hope that they know someone who can introduce you to that form of care. But most of us don't have that. Most of us don't know that person we can rely on. Most of us don't even know if our loved ones have sought therapy. And our platform wants to ensure that if you don't have anyone, just do a Google search, you'll find us.
Yes.
And that's been our journey since 2018.
Awesome, guys.
I want to ask you something. Mental health as a space, as you said, awareness is growing, right? But there's a journey which someone takes from having the awareness to finding the right solution, for the lack of a better, word for them. And that journey could take someone weeks, sometimes could probably take months. Maybe I know of a friend, it took him years to find someone he could really identify and connect with and, who could help him out. Now, one thing is, to offer, different services, right? Is to say that there is a one-on-one, a therapist, there's a community, there's a workshop. But what, in your opinion, should be an ideal entry point for someone to say that what should they be seeking first, or if there is something, an order in any form, or maybe there is not, right? How should they familiarize themselves with the solutions which are out there? Because, okay, sometimes I might feel I just need a supportive community, but sometimes I feel that, no, I really want to talk to someone and talk through some of the things which have been going on in my head. And sometimes it's more like, okay, I know I'm in a good space right now, but I just want to expand what my knowledge is. So how does that really play out from a person-to-person perspective?
I actually feel like it's really a process of trial and error. There is no perfect first option for somebody to absolutely try when they're starting their mental health journey. I think for some people, therapy feels the best way to start, because usually the stigma around mental health is such where you don't want to talk to people who you know. And at the same time, some people also feel like even if I talk to peers in a support group, they may just talk about their problems. And I want to talk about someone who is I want to talk to someone who is professionally trained, and can be more objective and, who is, not part of my life in some way. So then they would probably go to therapy first. But maybe someone else is actually looking for, like Mani said, to not feel lonely in their experience, and to just know that there are others experiencing the same thing. So maybe support group would be something they go to. So I don't think there's a perfect starting point. I honestly think like all of these services are meant to be in like a symbiotic relationship with each other. Like as a therapist also, I don't think therapy is the be all end all to mental health at all. I recommend support groups multiple times to my clients. And I feel like a lot of times a support group can give them what I can't in a one-on-one setup. So yeah, I think that's my take on that.
So yeah, I think that's a nice objective way of looking at it, rather than, okay, I have a hammer, everything around me is a nail kind of situation. I think it just legitimizes you and the neutrality of your advice in many ways, rather than, okay, I have this service that I'm offering, obviously I'm going to solve everything with therapy. So I think that how to help. Sorry, I mean, you were saying something.
No, and that's actually been a founding story though. When we launched the platform, we were only featuring therapists. And within a week of launching the platform, I looked at her, she looked at me and we're like, we are pushing people inside a funnel. We're telling them that you're either seeking therapy or not caring for mental health. What are we doing? And this is 2018. Like, if you were to get access to support groups, you had to go to hospitals and ask for hospitals. Like, hey, do you have support groups in the hospitals? Can we start listing them? In most cases, they don't want to list online because they're like, who are you? What are you? Why should I do it? So back then, I remember we really wanted to feature support groups. We really wanted to feature helplines. In helplines in itself, right? There are multiple studies out there about the fact that if you reach out to a particular helpline, it does not pick up your phone call. And these are helplines which your Google now, your Siri, you just tell them, hey, give me a helpline, and they will feature those helplines. So which is why we've built a system where we are calling these helplines. We're checking if they pick up your phone call. We're checking if we can de-rank them, delist them, just re-rank them again. So it's not like anything everything on the platform is curated, because we feel that when you are trying to find that first option of, okay, I want a support group, I want a helpline, I want a therapist, the reason you maybe don't find that providing you ample support should be because maybe there wasn't a value fit. Maybe you felt that, oh, okay, fine, this support group was great, but the age group was younger than me, so I don't want to go back there. It shouldn't be because, but the support group didn't exist.
Okay.
It shouldn't be because...
absence of options.
Exactly. And the platform takes care of a lot of things. Like, we are the first platform that puts icebreakers across profiles. Now, I can ask you this question. Do you know what CBT is?
No, can be. Yeah. Something like that. I don't know.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And when you're looking at therapy, like, therapists come with multiple qualifications, multiple specializations. And as an average, like as the John Doe, you are like, I do not know what this means.
Yeah.
True. And I don't really care what my therapist's approach is. I want to know who they are. Like, why did they be a therapist? How would they like their first session with me to look like?
There's a lot of unknowns when you're going into it for the first time, which is
not there for like if you've never gone to an ortho before, you have some sense of what the conversation will be because you've gone to say an ENT before.
Yeah.
But you don't know what this is going to look like, sound like, feel like. Pop culture tells you one thing. If your only idea of therapy is The Sopranos, then you will have a completely different idea. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, but big question.
But the thing about the backgrounds in education is so true, because even if I go to let's say an orthopedic, right? After a point, it just looks like a lot of letters, and I'm like, I have no idea. This degree is relevant. I'm sure it's relevant. You would have spent 2 years and a lot of money doing it, so must be relevant. But what do I really know,
Absolutely.
right? I just go with the basic sense of trust that okay, and then so much of our impressions of how this physician was really comes down to how they interacted and how they made us feel.
Exactly.
Because what do you really know about medicine anyways? So
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, that's something we believe in as well, that when it comes to even choosing your therapist, qualifications is just one aspect of it. It's not the entire thing. Sure, I mean, ethically, your therapist should have a master's degree in psychology.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's really about what you said, the relationship.
It is
that
the
you're
softer
building.
aspects, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The softer aspects and how your sessions are feeling with them. Are you feeling heard? Are you feeling understood? Are you feeling not judged by them? Are they able to explain their approach to you in a way that makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there is like a creation of an equal space between you and them, where they are not coming from a top-down expert, I know better about your life than you, which a lot of therapists actually do have that approach.
By the way, everything that you said is great advice for the service industry in general. As you were saying, yep, that makes sense in a client agency relationship also, like top down. No, right? We have equal partners, all that. Yeah, I think that's interesting. Yeah.
And so just to close, like that's why we have an icebreaker platform everywhere. So if you want to reach out to a support group and you have similar support groups on the platform, they answer about 11 to 12 questions about them. About why did they launch? Why are they here? What do they want your takeaways to be? What are some things they're not equipped to support?
Yeah.
And same with therapists as well. You know everything from what did they do in their pastime to why did they become a therapist to everything in the middle of like what do they want your first session with them to look like. And I do feel when you have that idea before reaching out to them, there's already this image you made of your mind of who this person is. Like, okay, this person seems right for me. Or this support group seems right for me. And I think that in itself really helps you feel that you've made an informed choice.
got it.
Yeah.
But coming to the point about informed choice, right? When the point to which a person says that I feel I need support at this point, right? With whatever mitigation/management I had been managing with till now is not working anymore, right? When that need surfaces, what I want to understand is that at what point do you get people? Are there people who have a realization very quickly, and is there a pattern to it in any way, or are there people who would come after a time where they have caused a lot of some sort of agony and putting themselves through a lot of pain and suffering basis? And again, I'm talking about very a lot of people who would watch this would probably be English educated urban Indians living in some large cities of India. So I'm talking about that demographic, right? What is the kind of people, in what kind of spaces do you encounter them?
Yeah. I think if I can speak about therapy, I've noticed that a lot of people, say in their 30s maybe, usually seek therapy at a time when things are going to shit. Like it's
fair.
extreme and severe, and it feels like therapy is the last resort that they are seeking. But I feel like a lot of the younger folks, say in their 20s or even college-going kids, I think these days they're a lot more open to seeking therapy, maybe at the first few signs of distress, because it's not seen. I think therapy should not be seen as the last resort. I think it should be seen as one part of your support system that you're accessing. So it can be about, building friendships. It can be about learning how to improve your self-esteem at college and, at workplace. And it can be also about seeking therapy.
Yeah.
So I feel like the younger population looks at therapy as just a part of the support system. And there's a lot more openness in their conversations also with each other, where it's almost like, I go to therapy, do you go to therapy? It's become very normalized.
It's not even that. Like I teach in a university, and I speak to a university which is known for its psych course also. And sometimes it's not even like they're saying, oh yeah, I go to therapy due to. It's like it's just by the way, like this happened in a cafe. It's like, like, yeah, this book was recommended to me by a therapist. Like, and they move on from that. It's just part of their life. And I feel that's great for the younger generation. But, do you feel like, we will talk about the internet, of course, in a very large way. And as folks who your business model, as it were, or your platform is hosted on the internet, but I'm assuming a lot of the problems that people come to you stem from the internet in some way or the other, right? Be it like abuse, or be it like mental breakdowns, or like keeping up with peers, whatever the case may be. In your experience, collective experience, like, has the internet kind of been like a net positive or negative? I know that's a very reductive question, but I'm just putting it as a broad topic, and I think we'll branch out from there.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I can say whether it's a net positive.
Actually, ignore the net positive and negative. Just internet X mental health.
Yeah.
2020 in mid 2020s.
Yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts to share.
Don't worry.
Time is not our problem.
Okay. All right. So I want to start with just maybe talking about how internet has felt supportive for mental health.
Sure.
So I think in my experience, when the pandemic hit, I feel like the internet and connecting with people through the internet as well as social media felt like a space of relief from whatever was going on. I also think it became somewhat of a channel for a lot of people to discover certain things about themselves that maybe their 9-to-5s and their daily routine otherwise was not allowing them to discover. There was no time for it. And the pandemic just gave us a lot of time. Of course, in addition to everything else that was really stressful and traumatic about it. So I think the internet has the power to help you discover things about yourself, maybe become or come into like a more authentic version of you, parts of you that you maybe enjoyed earlier and then maybe suppressed because of, what the world asked of you through your job. And then the internet allows you a little corner to explore that. And at the same time, I always say this, that I don't think the internet is really a safe space, because I honestly don't think that the word safe can really just be assigned to a space as a quality. I think the safety of a space comes from the participants of that space.
Okay.
Right? And the internet is so vast.
To you, this would not be a safe space.
Absolutely. And vice versa. Right? But the internet is so vast, with so many unknown and known variables, I guess, that I don't think it's possible to guarantee that it's a safe space. So I feel like that can bring certain pitfalls with it, maybe in the form of bullying or trolling that exists out there. Also, I feel like sometimes the internet can be very unforgiving as a place because of just the permanence of your content.
Digital memories of everything.
Absolutely. Like something you've said or done is just there on the internet forever. And there are people, constantly, I guess, making comments about it in one form or the other. So I feel like that can impact one's mental health in some way. So yeah, those are some things I see that are difficult about the internet.
Mani, anything?
Yeah, I mean, like the internet is Reddit, but your experience is always a subreddit.
That's a lovely way to put it.
You're never going to find anything on the homepage that you like. You'll always go to a subreddit. And I think like all my friends, all my support systems, all my job opportunities, everything has been through the internet.
Yeah.
Like I hear stories of people saying that, oh, I met this person through my college, or this is an alumni connect. I do not know what that means.
Yeah, we essentially do these other things like that, right?
Like, what is an alumni connect? I do not know. What is a second, third degree network connection that's not on the internet?
Yeah.
I have no idea. But again, at the same time, I have maybe my last post on Instagram was 3 years ago or 2 years ago. So I actively don't share on the internet because there's always a thing of, oh, will this get reach? Oh, but I'm not looking for reach. Oh, but do I want reach?
Yeah.
Okay, no, but what if I just want to share that I'm doing this? And then you just find that pocket that works for you. Like for me, it's a 24-hour story. Like I don't care if 100 people have seen it, 1,000 people have seen it. I'm just using as a window of just sharing what I'm doing and I let it be.
Yeah.
But for some people, it's Twitter. For some people, it's a subreddit. It's a bunch of things.
I feel like that's another pitfall of the internet, right? Like maybe you start off using the internet as a way to be your authentic self and like maybe explore some sort of content creation of dancing or cooking or maybe even just sharing an idea. But then suddenly it shifts to how many likes am I getting and comments and that engagement aspect, which sometimes I think takes the fun out of.
Oh, yeah. Yesterday we were speaking with a journalist who reports in the tech and culture space, and we were discussing the reification of weddings, right? And how much technology has shaped culture. And by the virtue of shaping culture, it is also changing people in that sense, right? So, and of course, there is an entire discussion to have on validation of content and validation as a need. Right. But then at a very human level, validation is a need. Right. We do want to be validated. The only question becomes by who and whose validation do we really care for and who should one be caring for. So in this thing, I want to ask you something because you mentioned that amongst the people in their 30s, they almost come to you when there is shit has hit the roof. Right. Now, when if you could broadly categorize in your own experience as a therapist, right? Do they come identifying saying that I'm really struggling with X? Or they just come to you saying that I'm just really struggling? Like, is there some amount of self-awareness for a back or self-introspection which has already happened before they seek help? Or they really don't even do that and come to a point that I really don't know, I'm completely out of options right now, I need help. Where do you think it starts for that particular age group?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a spectrum. I feel like I've met people who know exactly what they're going through and they've researched enough about it to also find vocabulary around it, which I think is also a cool thing about the internet today. Like you don't need to set an appointment with a therapist to know
At least
what
get
you're
the
going
basics
through.
out of the way. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like at least I'm all for that kind of decentralization of information. I don't think therapists and professionals need to have that kind of a
Control.
power and control over what vocabulary reaches people. So I think there are folks who are able to recognize what they're going through and then come to me or go to a therapist. And then there are also folks who, I guess I haven't really met anyone who says, I don't know what's going on. I feel like people always have some inkling of what's going on. Like as a therapist, I do believe that people are experts of their own lives. Even though I have the expertise, quote unquote, based on the degree and the learnings that I've done. Yeah. I do feel like people have the best knowledge about what's going on in their lives and what are they struggling with, what has worked, what is not working. And I actually feel therapy is a space for you to discover that through yourself, for yourself. It's not about me as a therapist telling you that you need to be doing this to fix this in your life. But it's really about co-creating that space with the client where maybe I ask the right questions or I dig into certain parts of their life for them to know that, these are some knots in my life that I was aware of, but I didn't really look at. And I want to look at it now in a safe space.
In a way, what you're saying is that the answer is already there within. You are just a facilitator to try and get that out by asking the right questions, imagining the right scenarios, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, that's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, so on the thing on validation, which you were talking about, right now, when we talk to people who want to create content, right, as part of 6% Club, one of the things we tell them that, in fact, one of the pledges we ask them to take is that I'm going to suck at the beginning. That, we're just starting out, you're not going to make well. But they're also mentally trained on a model that success is external validation in terms of likes, shares, people commenting, engaging, and, some sort of following there, right?
Yeah.
But there is a huge journey which a person takes from starting and getting good. And not everyone gets there eventually. Even after getting good, you may not see success, and that's a possibility, right? Why do you think this entire thing has taken place? Like, the need for validation has always been there. The society, we cared for what our neighbors and relatives thought. Now it is about a community on the internet, right? But why has it taken such a sort of a vicious form on the internet? That why does whatever I put out as my content need to be liked so much? Probably, I don't think amount of stuff you would have written as kids on our books as essays, which are probably pretty bad, I think. But never really cared for it, what I was writing. But why has this changed? Is it to do with a larger societal trend, or is it, it is? Okay, then I would love to know what.
I mean, the word that's coming to my mind is capitalism.
Okay, go ahead.
Like the idea of your self-worth being associated with your outcome. How much labor you put into something, or the idea that at the end, the outcome is what matters, not the process, in terms of how it defines your self-worth and your capability as a content creator. That comes from the larger idea of capitalism as well, right? So I feel like as a society itself, we reward outcome. We reward success through that. We don't reward the fact that did you have fun in the process while maybe making this content piece that didn't get enough likes or didn't get enough engagement, but did you learn something through that? Or did that support you in learning or growing as a person in your own identity? That's not what we reward. So I feel like the outcome is what's rewarded the most. And I feel like that's where the success, our idea of success is associated with that.
Now, the idea of success itself, like if we look at the generation of, at least both of us are in late 30s, so I should only talk about us at the moment. I will not conveniently or inconveniently bucket you guys into us, our generation. But is that our parents in the 60s and the 70s grew up with fairly scant resources and opportunities, right? So the lives they lived were very much means to an end, right? And I think that was probably what was needed at that time, and probably most of them tried to do the best they could. For me, what I feel is that somewhere, despite having, and again, I'm talking about this as a privileged man, despite having a lot better opportunities and even outcomes today, right? Somewhere I've still imbibed that idea of success, right? It could also be the way that you were pushed as a kid, or you must excel in school, or, this particular college or this kind of job and everything, right? Now, given the fact that there is some amount of self-awareness about it itself, that we talk about the fact that, this is an unhealthy ideal to look at, right? But still at some level, we are really linking our identity to what we do at work.
Yeah.
Do you think that's an extension of what you're talking about, capitalism's impact, or is it something else which I'm misreading into this?
No, I think it's very connected to that. I feel like our parents' generation, for them, associating success with outcome was survival. Like that's the only way they could survive in the world, get money on the table, earn a livelihood, all of that. They needed to hustle. Yeah. They needed to get the best results. And I think that kind of learning, for sure, as children, maybe we've imbibed it through observation or through like them directly telling us. But I also feel like I don't want to sound too jargony, but I also feel like there's a lot of that kind of trauma that we carry in our bodies intergenerationally. What I mean is that when our parents have gone through a certain kind of survival mechanism. They carry that stress and that anxiety that does get passed on to the children. And that's almost like a very unconscious experience that we have, which is why, like you said, even though we may intellectually have that awareness that I don't want to associate my self-worth with outcome, but emotionally, unconsciously, it's a very deep link that exists. And that takes time to build awareness around and really de-link, which is why, I mean, without sounding too dramatic, I think our generation can be the cycle breakers, where the more awareness that we build or the more, say, help that we seek, we can really understand how these things are influencing us and make better choices.
Yeah, and I kind of already see that, right? I see a lot of folks in the younger generation, again, this might be from a small privileged subset, that are aware of these things. I mean, just the fact that they're going to therapy itself, I suppose, normalizes good, but also they are aware, more aware than we were at that age or even now, about the ill effects of too much screen time and, like, okay, the constant, the constant chase for likes, validation, etc. Maybe they feel it themselves, maybe they see their Gen Z creators putting out very vulnerable reels saying that I can't do this anymore and I'm going to take a break for 2 months.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like, to me, one of the most pivotal moments in Indian mental health was when Deepika went and said,
absolutely,
guys, I have, and for a star of her stature to be able to do that, I think I'm sure there was a lot of criticism, like, hey, or you're like, we're an actor is making so many crores and have a big house and all that sort of thing. But I think that was sort of like a watershed moment in many ways. So yeah, I guess you're right. This generation, or maybe the ones younger than us anyway, could be the cycle breakers in many ways. I also feel like it's such an interesting time that we live in, right? I'm not going to say good or bad, but the internet is changing, people are changing, our approach to mental health is changing. There are problems all over the world, there are solutions all over the world. It feels like, there's just so much it's great to observe neutrally, in terms of what all is kind of happening, the internet's impact on mental health and all that sort of thing. And of course, the intersection, all this plays with content at large, whether it's content about mental health like you guys create, or which we'll segue into in a bit, which is, can content act as almost act as a healing thing by itself? One of the things, is this a good time to segue into?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so one of the things that, so when we started out the program that we did, we had a few beliefs, right? A few things that we said, we are not going to deviate from a few certain principles, right? And one of them was, both of us have created content for the sheer joy of it. To date, I don't know how many downloads Simplified has. That's how bad I am at this. And we just had a lot of fun along the way, right? And there have been moments where at least I have been tempted, okay, should do this, do that, or whatever. And I realized, like, okay, if I need to grow, then I need to do this. I'm not really going to put that in. It's going to become work. This is not work. If I need money, there are other more efficient ways to make money. I always tell people, content creation is the worst way for you to make money.
Yeah.
I think that's what
It is. Like, it's a very long, arduous, unlikely, improbable way. And we say, like, yeah, sure, we're monetizing right now, but that was after 9 years of doing things. I won't say that was all for waste or something. And I definitely don't want to look at my content project at least as, oh, that is the investment I made for this. I think that's a very wrong way of looking at this. Till like
investment is also a capitalist word.
It's a capitalist word.
And exactly. Return on investment.
Return on investment.
Absolutely.
We did not look at it that way. And even then I would have said, listen, if that's the outcome that you want, put in index fund and you will make a lot more money. But the point I'm coming to is
investment advice.
we need to put on famous. No, the point I'm making is, one of our core beliefs for ourselves and what we try to imbibe in the course, we don't force it on people, is that content creation can be therapeutic. It can be fun. It can be a distraction for many of you. And we also are conscious of the people who we are speaking to. Our course is geared towards working professionals, most of whom are in a corporate job, some happy, some not so. from Monday to Friday, in many cases Saturday also, who just want a creative outlet. And the parallel somehow that we have drawn that seems to have resonated with many of them is, as kids, we just used to open the backside of our notebooks and just doodle during class. We didn't care for validation at that point. We showed us that somebody laughed and whatever, right? And it's that kind of joy that we want to kind of bring back. Not saying that it's for everyone. There are some people who want to become stars or whatever, but I think it's important for people to kind of figure out, okay, are you doing this for a weekend detox, or are you doing this as a stepping stones of one day becoming the headliner of YouTube Fan Fest, right? Both are good outcomes, but it's important for you to figure this out, right, at the beginning, or at least in the early days. So speaking of the first part of it, and I want to ask you this specifically, because I want to know if you have recommended any form of content creation, and that's a very ugly, jargony way to say, journal or do coloring books, or just put something out just for the sheer joy of getting it out of your system. Because a lot of people who have sat on those chairs have used the phrase "get it out of my system" or just "get it out." Almost like it was catharsis.
Yes.
So just want, I know it's a very, very long question. I just want long question asked this way: can content creation be therapeutic? That's just
Absolutely.
about it.
That, by the way, that question just sounds like me in a therapy session.
Yeah.
By the way, it's like, you said this and then they said that, but then that, and then but what about this? So, yeah. Okay, no, I think the short answer to that is definitely. I think content creation can be therapeutic. When it comes to my clients, it's interesting. I haven't really used the word content creation as something that I recommend to them, but I do recommend exploring a creative outlet. And I think content creation is one creative outlet, like you mentioned. And it's interesting that people have spoken about creative outlets as a release and a catharsis, because it makes perfect sense. I think through the day, our bodies and our nervous systems are just constantly activated, right? Like you're maybe in a job or some external stimuli, maybe you're at home with your partner, with your family. There's something or the other that you're doing which requires you to give energy.
Or you're just doom scrolling.
Or but in fact, the doom scrolling comes at the end of such a day, as almost as a way of coping with how...
Or almost taking control back, that now I will do what I want.
Now it's my time. Exactly. So when I speak to clients about, at the end of such a day where you've just given and given and given, what does it mean to take time for yourself? And most of them talk about watching maybe a show or doom scrolling. And a lot of their go-to activities are about consuming content. And I tell them, can we look at other ways of me time that don't involve consumption, but involve release? And expression in some way that allows it to come out of your system, like you were saying. So I think that is so crucial. And I feel like that really helps complete what is known as the stress cycle. So just a book recommendation here. There's a book called Burnout that's written by the Nagoski sisters. Brilliant book. I would recommend it to anyone. To just understand how burnout happens and how do you really prevent it. But what they speak about is something called a stress cycle, that throughout the day, like I mentioned, there are multiple things that you're doing that create stress for you in the body.
Almost like literal stress.
Stress that is
like a spring almost.
Absolutely. And at the end of such a day, even though we think that, okay, once I've shut my laptop, the stressor for the day is done. So I have de-stressed now. Now I can watch something, or I can, engage in some consuming content. But that's not true. What they say is that even after shutting down your laptop, you may think the stressor is done, but your body doesn't know that. Your body is still activated and it's still feeling that stress. So you need to consciously do something to indicate to your body that now you can relax. Now you can release. And that's where maybe a creative outlet really helps. So whether it's writing something, doodling, paint, gardening, cooking, anything to do with your hands, I think anything that allows you to express.
Yeah. It's like a very weird analogy I'm thinking of is like cats getting zoomies. It's like this. Yeah, it's like they sleep
That's
for.
so cute.
Yeah, I mean, somebody like when you were saying that, it's like they sleep for half the day and
Yeah.
it's like they're building up something, and in a space of 5 chaotic minutes, they see what that something is.
Everything.
Yeah. So, and it brings me back when you were saying doing something with your hands, like how, and I mean, this might seem like a kind of ironic question coming from us because we espouse a lot of digital content creation, but I like the thing about using your hands. I think there's something about the physicality of content creation in whatever way it may be, right? They often say also, I'm sure you've given this advice many times, that just exercise, physical exercise is a great way of de-stressing. Again, for the same reasons, I suppose, that you're just letting it out of your system in some way. Lot of people who like heavier music listen to heavy metal as catharsis. Again, maybe there is something to all of that. There are studies, right? I think all of them. I'm not very sure about how true they are. There heavy metal fans are heavier, are happier, and heavier. Also, yes. Also, yes.
Sharath from our video team is totally agreeing with like, yes. Happier.
Oh man. Yeah, like, is there something to that? Like, and if that's the case, I'm almost thinking, if the eventual outcome is also digital content, which, let's face it, 90% of the content that's created these days, even for, self, whatever, it almost makes me feel like there should be a physical
Element.
Element to it as well. Whether it is like sketching out your first concepts or doing some level of going out there and being with nature, even if you're capturing digital photos for later. So I don't know, that's random theory that I have.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm also just drawing from other concepts and theories in my mind. But the idea of physically writing something down has always known to be powerful.
Yeah.
As a way of catharsis and as a way of just engaging with an idea more deeply, more meaningfully. Writing is such a big part of, I would say, activities that I suggest to my clients. Even the idea of going into nature or just having some sensorial experience that doesn't have to just be in your mind, but really allows you to engage through other senses.
Yeah, because one thing that you said a while back really struck with me, which was your mind knows that when you shut the laptop, your mind knows, but your body doesn't know. Now, if your content project is just on a different login on the same computer, you're literally using the same keyboard, same setup. And even if you take that laptop and go somewhere else outside, saying, okay, I'm in nature now, but you're still typing the same way, then your body is still like, okay, we are still like, okay, guys, we are still in work mode or whatever.
That's interesting.
So,
yeah.
I don't know, again, these are all just random theories that you're having.
Interesting. So just because I think today a lot of people do their work via laptops at home, etc. Like versus say if your work is more physical in nature, and then maybe you're using the laptop, maybe that would be different.
I would go to the extent of saying, and this that even if you have a different laptop for your content project,
a lot of people you will work on your laptop, but your first draft is on your phone.
Yeah.
Right? That amount of division a person does always do with content creation.
Yeah. Because I've always believed in the power of having a dedicated space for something, right? And maybe there is something to that, and that can act in both a positive and negative way. Because if your that corner is set up for work, then maybe there's a part of your content project also. Because every content project has an angle of execution associated with it, which is not necessarily everyone's favorite part, right? Say editing or whatever. Maybe that's what you do over there.
Yeah.
Because anyway, you're in that zone. Your body needs to feel that also if you need to finally get it out. But maybe the more creation, the more therapeutic parts of it can happen elsewhere in nature or physically or something of that sort. Just thinking out loud. Like this interview is happening physically, very consciously, despite the inconvenience to all concerned. She's being with that. Oh, it's in a studio, is it?
because everything's online.
Yeah. So, but I'm assuming that we wouldn't have the conversation that we're having if we were just in boxes, because then we would default to, while you guys are talking, I'll be like, chalo, let's see what the score is or whatever. All the temptation is there. So maybe there is something to that. Like, I am increasingly thinking more about the power of the physical world, the relevance of the physical world rather, in an age that is increasingly digital. And I think it's something that people are across age levels are kind of realizing. Like, the common trope among music fans at least is that vinyl is making a revival and all that sort of thing, and it's not because of some hipster love for the 60s or 70s. Is because it allows you to disconnect from the distractions of the internet, and slow travel for you, for example, is exactly a travel version of that. And I feel like I spoke to somebody who loves test cricket, and they sit, as irrational as it sounds in 2024, sits and watches all 5 days of a test match and just lose themselves in that, think all kinds of thoughts. And I think there's something lovely about just losing yourself in something. Ultimately, I don't know if it's about screens, physicality, etc. I think it's just ultimately about, it comes back to that word, right? The M word, mindfulness, I suppose. So maybe it's about that. I don't know whether it's possible to do that in one screen, because because I always thought, okay, is it possible to mindfully shift from your work profile to your, you have your 2 logins on Windows and all that sort of thing. But what you're saying is that your body still thinks, that your mind has shifted, but your body is still, it feels like a lot of this inconvenience of, the modern age is because our software is still rooted in the primitive, where we have just like,
no, so there's a very beautiful book I read. It's called The Hour Between the Dog and the Wolf. It's actually written by a stockbroker who then quit Wall Street and studied to be a neuroscientist. And he talks about the biology of taking risk. And what he says is that when we talk about, my gut says this. Now, the thing with the gut, and it's a very physical thing, right? The gut is not about what your brain is saying. What your gut says, gut works when you have been conditioned into that environment. You've gone through that cycle multiple times, and your gut has that much data to work with to say that this is something off. Which is why when we talk about women's intuition, because they have been through so many unsafe experiences in their lives that they know this feels off. Guys have zero clue at what is happening most of the time. That's just reality, right? So what he says is that if you look at most athletes, right, the ones who are at the top of their games, right, when something happens, their body knows even before their mind has registered this has happened. So I think one thing which we have probably never understood really is how the mind and body are in sync, but also when they are not in sync. Right? The fact that they are operating as 2 different systems, and you have to also ensure that you're taking care of both systems rather than just trying to hyper-focus one system, which is your mind, and the other system will catch up at some point in life. I don't care.
True. And in fact, I think that the body has a lot of wisdom that we don't give it credit for. Like you said, your body has known something even before your mind has probably registered it. That is so true. And I feel like, say, for example, even in the pandemic, I feel like almost everyone went into exercise all of a sudden. I don't know if you guys felt that.
Did it.
But
Thankfully continued, but did it.
Yeah, but that's interesting to me because it's not just about having free time. But the way I see it is like, I think it was maybe the body's wisdom to automatically know that it needed movement as a way to cope with the stress of that pandemic and just staying. And I think the body just knows before the mind does.
Which is why dogs and cats stretch the moment they get up. Because they feel that need to physically be active before they can become mentally active and perform whatever slapping cat do to your face.
We have invoked cat behavior twice. There's a lot of wisdom to be learned from.
Some cats, my lord.
Where were we?
No, I think you're discussing the fact that, the
physicality body. No, go for it.
No, but what I'm also seeing is, there's a trend in all the questions that you also asked, right? Our grandparents journaled, their grandparents journaled, their grandparents journaled, but they journaled because they wanted an outlet. We are journaling almost as a form of
performance.
I would say legacy. or as a form
Okay,
of,
interesting.
like leaving something behind, something that people remember me by. And I think to even then link that to the internet, right? Because of the permanence of the internet, I see no difference between you creating content on a piece of paper versus you making it on Photoshop. I think it's the exact same thing. Maybe your skills now are different. Like now maybe you're not comfortable sketching on a piece of paper, but just using a stylus, using the brush on that screen, you're just way more creative. But because of the internet, like when, say, 30 years ago, our parents will be like, oh, my child made this painting. I'm going to send it to the newspaper.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the newspaper feature my child's painting in page 7, where they're featuring every child's painting. And I'm going to cut a picture of I'm going to cut out of that feature. I'm going to show everybody who comes over.
Yeah.
They won't show the painting. The painting is still on the parents' hand, but they will show the newspaper cut of the painting.
That is the success of the painting in that sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that way the internet has, like, because it's democratized media, like we no longer have to reach out to editor at newspaper.com
Yeah.
or physically send them an envelope that's sealed and hope that they open it. It's democratized it to such an extent where you just have to make an account. And because it does that, it's also created this false expectation that, oh, you like how this is all you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is all you have to do. Just post.
Yeah.
No, like that's not. Yeah, that is step one when you come to actually marketing. When it comes to a release.
Yeah.
But attaching that step to the entire process of creation,
I get what you're saying, yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you've opened a YouTube account. Oh, now you are a big star. Like, no, there's a lot that goes there before you have even can see success on the horizon or whatever, success or whatever, growth or whatever it is on the horizon. I get what you're saying. In some sense, what you're saying is one theory that I always believe is that gatekeepers in some shape or form have to exist, not because of capitalism, but because another one of my pet theories is that humans have always had only 24 hours, right? So no matter how much content we keep putting out into the universe, ultimately consumption is going to be only 24 hours for everybody, right? Unless we keep churning out more babies, which means there's more 24 hours to handle. So very weird way to create time. I know. Yeah.
Very inefficient also. I'm a resource-wise.
I come from a digital world, right? You just need to create a replica of a website and you have more inventory. So now you have inventory in terms of time. Sorry, this conversation took a slightly different turn from what it should have. Jokes apart, it's like gatekeeping in some shape or form needs to exist. Platforms will say, oh, we have given everyone a voice, right? Because we exist, all musicians now have a platform to put stuff out. You know what? Musicians always have had a platform. It used to be their hard disk. It used to be a tape at home, whatever. But the work kind of starts from there, right? Metallica had to record their demo, physically go give it to people, and then that happened. Okay, today a musician, sure, sharing it is easier, but if it's easier for me, it's also easier for him, it's easier for everybody else. So the competition, so in some sense, if you look at the aggregate in terms of work that needs to be done, it's remained the same, and maybe in some sense it's actually gone up. Maybe it would have been easier for a musician to create music back in the day when there were actually gatekeepers. When, okay, do a good job, make sure you're in front of a record executive, he'll take care of everything else. Today, you're like, haha, no gatekeepers are there, I can put up music on my own. Guess what? You need to do everything else on your own, including marketing, this thing, that thing. And at some point of time, you're like, I wish there was somebody who would do this for me. Hi, gatekeeper, I can help. So it's kind of like gone back to that. Whether those gatekeepers are record labels or human curators who do that kind of job for them, it feels to me that because of the sheer amount of content that's put out there, and at this time, and because we have only so much amount of time to consume, that gatekeeping in some shape or form, formal, informal, whatever the case may be, has to exist. I don't know how we went into here. It's like you spoke about, okay, if you're putting something out there, it needs to be discovered, picked up something. Now, whether that gatekeeper is an informal gatekeeper, is an algorithm, whether it's a human curator, whether it is you bugging your more famous friend to, hey, please put this out somewhere, all that sort of thing, I guess
No, but there's one thing on gatekeeping, right? Now, previously gatekeeping is to limit who gets in and who doesn't get in, right? But if you look at it, what gatekeeping or the lack of gatekeeping hasn't changed is the theory of hits, right? The biggest pieces of content which make money still take a chunk of attention.
Yeah.
Sure, there is a long tail and there's a whole understanding about the long tail. But I'm saying it's not the absence or the presence of gatekeeping that changes.
Sure.
It is the sheer choice that you are flooded with.
Yeah.
Right? The thing is that, and that's in fact, that's a question which you have to ask, that how much content is too much content?
Yeah.
Right? And the question is, you don't know that because there is nobody to draw the line, because nobody can draw the line.
Yeah. And sort of, I'll just take that a little ahead. I'll say the gatekeepers, whether they're formal, informal, the evaluation criteria has changed slightly for them, I'd like to think. And okay, I'll just give you an example, right? I'm like blabbering on for too long over here. So everyone knows Pink Floyd's greatest album, or the most famous one, commercially famous one, I won't say greatest, like, no, is Dark Side of the Moon. Right? Is Dark Side of the Moon, and lots of people associate, even those with the passing knowledge of the band will associate them with that. Now that is, yeah, sure, their most commercially successful album and kicked off a golden era for them, which fell in the latter half of their career, which is what I love using this example when I'm talking about how music has changed from then to now, and not necessarily in a bad way, right? Because it was a product of its time. Is that EMI or whoever the record label was, I think it was EMI, who allowed them 7 albums and close to 1.5 decades of mucking around and finding their sound before they landed and said, this is both a commercial success and a critical success. And then, of course, they became stars. EMI made a lot of money, so did they, so on and so forth. Artist today, and or rather, a gatekeeper today, and hence an artist today, does not have that luxury where they have to hit it out of the park from album 1, song 1. And of course, the incentives around that, if you have to hit it out of the park from song 1, it means that you also kind of need a social media personality so that, you have that kind of reach to send your first song to, I mean, there's really no point to all of this. It's just that the landscape has changed a lot, I suppose, and gatekeepers, yes, are always there, but the criteria of evaluation in some sense has changed because those long gestation periods are there. And to me, it's fascinating because content I have found, whatever shape of way you want to call it, Instagram Reels now and long albums back then, has always been a product of the technology and economic incentives of that time, if it makes sense. And I would like to think, maybe naively, that we are always living in the golden era of some kind of content. For example, I'd like to think that we are either at the fag end of or right in the middle of, depending on your point of view, the golden era of OTT content, right? We've seen lots of experimental shows over the last few years, and even the most nostalgic person will say that anything on Netflix right now is way better in terms of writing and all that than some of the sitcoms that we still nostalgically hold on to. So maybe that's one way of looking at it, that every era has some kind of golden thing going through. Maybe you would argue that gaming is what, where all the storytelling and all that is right now, and the most, like what rock music was in the 70s, gaming is right now, and maybe the actor strike, the OTT era has kind of ended, Maybe that's one way of looking at it. I don't know how we got here from therapy, but
we have gone all over the place.
So let's rein it back.
I wanted to say something and I'm like, I think I will go even farther away. That's not what I'm saying. I will not.
This is what happens when my mic is switched on for more than 1 minute or so. Rescue us. Bring us back.
It's part of the process.
It's part of the process, right? Absolutely. Yeah, so
great point to have a therapist. Therapist, like, it's a part of the process. Don't be so harsh on yourself.
Absolutely.
Because rambling has to. So one of the things which Anand just told us in the interview before this is to say that you create content because you're dissatisfied with something. There's an inherent dissatisfaction happening with you, which comes out in a creative expression, right? And which resonated with me as personally. Because when I go back to think about my content journeys, I have had those points saying that I think we are doing travel wrong, right? And that's where the whole spiel starts of slow travel and what I'm saying. But I want to talk about two things, and I don't know if do both of you speak Hindi? I don't know this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Better than me anyway.
That's why I didn't ask you. The word which is often used is, which probably used to be used in the context of age earlier, but I feel we need it even more, is the word Thehraav. Right? Or in a more basic sense, one, the ability to do fewer things, be satisfied faster, or in a more day-to-day basis, the ability to be bored.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And do nothing.
And do nothing. And I feel, and it's again a theory of ours which you will either validate or throw in the dustbin, is to say that we are missing out on both. Right? Because, and this is a thing which we have been discussing, both of us have read this book, Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, which essentially tells you that do fewer things, focus on quality. Right?
And we let things take its natural time.
Natural
the
time.
third
Yeah.
And
tenet.
as they say that, nature is slow, but everything happens. Nothing doesn't happen in nature. Right? Just want to take your take on that, how much of it is real versus how much of it is just a sense of romanticization and philosophically making these things look beautiful.
I feel you're putting like a lot of importance on what I have to say about
Okay, what do you have to say? Both of you.
No, by I mean, and just in general, like I think, like if I could just say before you have to add anything, like I feel like if it is real to you, it's real to you. I think there's value in that. If you feel like there is, like the slowness is something that gives you meaning, I think that's valid enough. It doesn't have to be validated by a theory. But yeah, I will chime in with my thoughts after I give it a thought in case you want to.
No, I agree. I think if we weren't so worried about posting updates about ourselves, if we weren't so worried about how others will perceive how our content is, then we'll all be slow. We'd all love a slow, peaceful life. But the reason we are even complicating it by wondering how do I monetize my content, by wondering how do I increase likes on what I'm posting, is because that's sadly the world we're living in. And there's no, like, while the internet has given us control to actually be the ones sharing our story, we don't have the control to be like, we don't want to earn from this. Because everybody has to earn, everybody has to do what they're doing. And like some of my favorite vacations that we've taken have always been to places where there's no TV, no internet, no Wi-Fi. You are just relaxing.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is what a vacation was supposed to be.
Exactly. And like, have you ever returned from a vacation without any photos from your vacation?
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, but I'm very sure, like, up until recently, for me, that was not the case. Like, I'll take photos of the sky from the plane, even though I know the window is so smudged.
Yeah.
It's got everybody's fingerprints. You can't even see the clouds through it.
And worst case, you're probably never going to look at that picture again after the one time you have looked at it.
Absolutely.
Or you're taking it because you already know the song to which you want to create a reel.
Okay, luckily we haven't gone there yet.
No, Mani, I wouldn't take it even as far as saying, you're talking about output now. I wouldn't even take it to that level because of the sheer amount of stuff that is out there. Sometimes it can just be breathless keeping up, right? So I think slowness comes not from limiting your output, but almost like controlling your input in some way. Like, for example, if I were to give my own example over the last few years, and we have spoken about this many times, is I have been very conscious about my music consumption, focusing on fewer types of genres, or being more conscious about how I listen, even if it is the same quantity, right? And ironically, I think even though I'm listening to less, I feel like I'm listening to more, if that makes any sense. I've also cut down on the kind of newsletters and all that the input is controlled. And I think that you can stretch that analogy to anything else, including travel, right? And the example that he always likes using is like, if you like, as Indians, we have this behavior of, if we get Schengen visa, so we have to maximize and visit 10 cities in 5 days, or that sort of thing.
I call it experience maximization, memory minimization.
Yeah.
You are trying to go so far, you don't remember. You after 2 months, you realize, kya kiya tha? Something we did.
Something, some gothic building, some gothic building, some Trappist beer. Yeah, that's.
It's like you're trying to optimize everything
Yeah.
about what you're experiencing.
Yeah, and what you said about boredom. I had spoken to a cricket journalist, and he told me almost exactly that. He said and he was talking about the context of his 2 kids and all that. We have lost the ability to be bored, or the younger generation has lost the ability. They don't know how to be bored, like, because there's always stimulus for them to consume, and you can't blame them, because we as humans are wired to it as well. We see it in every generation, from 5-year-old all the way to our parents and grandparents as well. And he spoke about how that boredom for him as a child was very important, because then he would look at cricket scorecards, he would memorize them, he would make his own theories. Oh, this bowler got this batsman out in this match and this match in the same way. Is this batsman then liable to get out bowled all the time? Yes. And that insight that you have created yourself is just joins the dots. He said that made him a better analyst, writer, and thinker of cricket. And I think that's important. I think it's important. So, like, now what I try to do is, like, I genuinely try to just immerse myself in a song sometimes and say, okay, what is happening over here? What are the nuances over here that I missed last time? Can I form theories? Can I find my own equivalent of, oh, this batsman gets out in this way with the song? And there have been connects. Like, I've been, oh yeah, the solo always starts like this in these kind of songs. And it's very interesting when that kind of happens. I think like so many of these conversations have eventually ended up with, again, the M word, right? It's gone to mindfulness, whether it's travel, whether it's music, whether it's creation, whether it's consumption.
But if I can chime in very quickly, so 2 things I wanted to bring up. The aspect of Thehraav that you spoke of, and slowness and mindfulness. I think for me personally, I'm also a big proponent of it. It's something I resonate with very deeply. And I think one of the things that's helped me incorporate more of that is actually to question the idea of time. Like you were saying that there is this feeling maybe that time is running out.
Yeah.
And which is where the urgency, I think, comes from, that I need to do everything now.
Yeah.
And if instead we could view time as just this, I don't know, like a spiral that keeps going on, or a circle that's just constantly going on, rather than a line that there is a start and an end point. I feel like that really helps me visualize my life in a different way and incorporate more slowness, which is just to change my idea of time. And at the same time, the other aspect I wanted to bring in was actually about neurodivergence. And I think when it comes to neurodivergent folks, just a very quick nuance there, I don't think mindfulness is really aligned with a lot of how neurodivergent brains work, especially when it comes to what you said about deeply listening to, maybe one song, or reducing your input rather than output. I think for neurodivergent folks, or say specifically ADHDers, there is a lot of attention to give. And I think it helps when there is multiple aspects of input happening at the same time. But of course, maybe from lived experience, if you want to share something on, like, do you feel mindfulness is something that works for you, slowing down and focusing just on one thing?
Or is it more therapeutic for you to, like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'll put it the other way. Have you seen Inside Out?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So if you are a neurodivergent person, imagine your brain is having 13 consoles.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, it is not that you have one console and everyone's just pressing buttons. You have 13 consoles and every console is pressing a button. And
with
so
the same 5 emotions, or 13, whatever emotions.
Different for each time.
Emotions.
Like, the thing is, like, so when you think about slowing down, when you think about connecting with yourself, it's very different. I feel like the only place where I feel the most connected to myself is either when I am building something for myself, even if it's like an IKEA furniture at the end of it, or Lego growing up, or mechanics or whatever. Or on the other hand, it's when I'm spending time with pets.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the only time when all consoles shut down.
So maybe it's like slowing down is more of a physical activity for
Absolutely.
Yeah, like engaging with a pet or
Exactly.
building something together.
That's so interesting. Shutting down consoles. Wow, that's a very powerful image.
To the council sitting in your head.
No, to the council sitting in my head. No, that council is important. Anyway, no. I feel there is a very thick line as opposed to a thin line between ADHD and the nonsense that happens in my head. So let's keep these two perfectly. Yeah.
right.
It's not a thin line. It's a very, very thick line, and I have to yeah.
I actually want to know, but
I have a council of advisors in my head, imaginary friends that have helped me since childhood. Help me, yeah.
I love that. I mean, I feel like we all are made up of parts and voices.
One, I think we had mentioned this to one of the folks we spoke to yesterday as well, is I heard on one podcast, I forgot which British comedian said this, but it was one of them, who said, I have different states. Like just like how we're talking about computers as a work mode and there's a play mode, this person takes it to another, and we all of us do, right? You have your Zoom with your boss face, you have your, you as money with Shweta Singh, and you have with us, all that sort of thing, right? If you come to a Tesseract gig, obviously we will be there together saying, "Arey kya fuck calls on with Phoenix Market City," all that sort of thing, right?
Now Phoenix Market City will never sponsor this podcast. Please.
I don't think they would.
That's true. Wow. Please do not censor the effort over there. We shouldn't censor. Anyway, the point, he took it to another degree saying, and you might like this actually, he took it to the degree of saying, I have different mind space over different tasks even. There is, I forget his name, let's call him David. I have a bank David. Like when I'm going here, I don't need to think about these other parts, ideologies, whatever, right? I just need to focus. I need to go here. I need to get this. This is my outlook while I'm over here, and that's it. I thought that was nice. You have these almost different avatars, if I may, to kind of bring in at various points of time. So,
I love how there's like an element of choice there. Like I can choose which part of me I want to activate. In which situation.
Because it's almost like the others are irrelevant over here. The liberal activist is not relevant when you're in a bank setting. Don't complain about capitalism over there.
And I feel like that says a lot about identity as well, right? That we are not just one person. We are,
multitudes, as Amit.
We are multitudes, exactly. We are full of ambiguities, full of contradictions, and two avatars may contradict each other, but they still are us.
They still are us.
It's like we were just talking to a guest who used to be a dancer, and she says, I'm not creative. I'm like, how are those two thoughts coexisting in your head? Yeah, but she like it somehow does, and I understand that what she's saying, that the facts and our interpretation of those facts sometimes can be so vastly different in our heads that we may take away completely different things from that.
One thing we've noticed, and so we've just to give you guys a sense of where our course is right now. We are recording when cohort 2, weekend 2 is over. So it's still very, very early days, right? For this entire program course. Goodness knows what's going to happen after this. But it's around now that a lot of folks in the first cohort are actually getting their stuff out. And you can see a lot of their inhibitions, how they've decided to, shut down those consoles, as it were. And they're putting that work out. They're seeing, like, a lot of them had those same kind of doubts as any person putting stuff out there would like, is there a market for this? Is like, do I need to put this out? And we have to act as people called us content therapists, by the way, which I'm very happy about. And then we pat them on the shoulder. It's okay, just put it out for the sake of it. And the joy that I still remember, like the joy that one of the core members felt when they went to 100 listens. Yeah, sure. In the grand scheme of things, you can say that's just a small amount. But, she reflected on that and said 100 people have voluntarily chosen to download this, listen to this. And eventually, very soon, that became 200. And I'm sure that will grow from there, right? Depending on where she wants to take it. And I think it's been very gratifying for us who espouse all of this from a theoretical perspective and hoping that something will happen, that people are, one, putting stuff out, but more importantly, finding joy in, putting out and seeing the numbers, not because I've achieved this milestone, because the milestone almost acts as a reflection of, oh, okay, I've done this. I've put in the effort and that's now reflected over here. So I think that's very nice. I mean, it's not a question really. It's just an observation that that I had. And again, it goes back to our earlier point that we were making, that we definitely see this, not this as in what we are doing, but just generally creating for yourself as being a therapeutic output, because outlet, there is some, I think in this day and age, and for everything that we've spoken about, right? Algorithms, I think, plus of course all the pressures at work and all that sort of thing, this acts as a nice release, and I think it's very gratifying for us to see, to facilitate in some sense that all of this. So again, there's no question over here, but it's just an observation that that we have.
I feel like, I think what you're also doing is in a very nice way reframing the purpose of content creation, to be honest. I think you're really getting people to ask, what standards do you want to set for yourself? It doesn't have to be, like, sometimes I think the standards we follow are also determined by who has the power to tell that story, right? Like someone who has 1 million followers and all of that. Automatically, because they hold so much power, it becomes a standard to meet. But maybe for this young person, the 100 listens can be their standard if they just take that moment to reflect on what this means for them. And I feel like creating that space is so important, so they can reframe the story for them.
In fact, one of the things we talked about today itself in the session, and we talk about, is the clarity of ambition. What is your ambition with this? Like, are you doing it for joy, to share the lived experience? Like, for a lot of people, it could just be that, listen, I am a new parent. I want to talk to other parents to figure out what their experience has been. That there is no playbook for parenting, no matter how many books there may be. There is no right way or wrong way to do it in many ways. And I think you're right that, because the moment you have clarity of ambition, your definition of success changes. Like I, as a person, have always hated working out, still do to a fair degree. But now my definition of success is just doing my next class. That is the only definition I set. Because I'm like, I will take the smallest action to keep bada action. I am not taking it.
Yes.
And that has helped over a period of a year. Because it has compounded, and power of compounding is something we all, talk about, and we talk about it a lot between us. So help me understand this, right? That all of this is just, human beings are so complex. There is just so much happening, too much interaction, too much noise, right? Would there be baseline recommendations you have which could be applied to most people? Of course, nothing applies to everybody. To most people, which would help them to return to a more settled state, for the lack of a better word. Something which you would say that this will not harm you. It may or may not benefit you, but this will definitely not harm you.
To prevent, maybe to go back to one of the first things that you said, that will prevent people from reaching you in a panic state.
Right. Tell me a little more about what you mean by settled.
When you are holding that, even in this moment, right? Outside of the conversation and the threads it leads, I am not thinking about 3 other things I have to do tonight.
Right.
I'm not thinking about what I have to do next week. I'm not thinking about the flight I have to take back to Bangalore. In this moment, thanks to a physical setting, and we have so many people in the room here, I am into this conversation at that very moment, right? But that's not how I always feel. Right? There are times where there's just so many things running in my head. Correct? And that time I don't feel settled. I just feel that even if I'm doing this, half my body and mind is trying to do something else.
Absolutely.
I'm talking about that setup if it helps in any way.
Yeah. So essentially, like, how does one maybe be more present? In
Yeah,
one
okay, yeah, that's a
thing
better word. Yeah.
that they're doing.
I like the senses exercise. I think that's always been a good one for me.
Tell me more about that. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I mean, I always confuse the numbers. So I always just look, okay, each sense is it working? That's fine. So I don't look for the 5, 4, 3, but that's what I always resort
That's
to.
exactly how the exercise has
The
been
exercise page, yeah. In fact, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is part of our exercises page where like it guides the person.
Yeah, I
as
tell
you're
people
doing
what
it.
it is.
Yeah, I don't know what 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is.
Sure. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a very simple grounding exercise which helps you use your 5 senses to ground you in the present moment, wherever you're at. And it's most helpful for folks who might experience anxiety or just overwhelm, like you said, too many thoughts at once, too much happening at once. So what you're essentially supposed to do is take a moment, look at your surroundings, and maybe name out loud or in your head 5 things that you can see around you. So maybe right now I can see a chair, I can see a table, I can see both of you, etc. 5 things. So 5 things you can see, maybe 4 things you can touch. So I can touch the chair. And then you take a moment to really just feel what the texture of the chair is. So you're really just grounding yourself more and more in the present. So similarly, the pants that I'm wearing, I can touch that. Then 3 things you can, I'm confused now.
Yeah, see?
3 things you can hear around you, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So you're using your 5 senses in that systematic manner to help you feel more grounded and present. So yeah, that's, I think, a great exercise in general to deal with too much overwhelm. But I just want to come back to the part you said about... sorry, could you repeat that question?
The question was that what could be, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as an example,
Right.
could be those methods / rituals /
Yes.
things which you could do, which just help you feel a little more present in the moment you are in that.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the thing I mentioned about, when you're throughout your day, you're constantly activated, and something that you need to do more consciously and physically to deactivate and essentially start the relaxation response in your system. So I think some things that may help with that, I would say movement of any kind is a game changer. And personally speaking as well, plus it's something I recommend to clients. Even if at the end of the day, you're doing like a 10-minute cardio in your house of 10 jumping jacks, 10, high knees, and that's it. If you have time to do just that much, or a 10-minute stretching routine, what you're really doing is signaling to your body that the stressor is done and you can now relax, you can down-regulate. So I feel movement is a great way to do that. I also think creative outlets in general are a great way to do that. So whether that's content creation or even more simpler things like if you like cooking, then doing something with your hands through cooking, or maybe tending to your plants or taking some time with your pets. I think that kind of engagement really helps. And any kind of connection, I would say.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I feel like, so one thing we don't know about the nervous system is that something that helps us move from like high activation, high stress to low activation is when you're connecting with someone. So a very simple exercise is, say, if you have a loved one you can do it with, is taking a few moments to maintain eye contact with each other. And just taking a few seconds to allow that to being in that moment, locking eyes with each other, even matching breathing with each other if you have someone to do that with. If you don't, if you have a pet, sometimes I like matching my breathing with my pet as I'm petting the pet with every pet. I use pet a lot. But that kind of connection really helps stimulate relaxation in the person. So, these are some basic things people could try.
How about you, Mani?
No, I had too many thoughts in my head.
Too many thoughts. Okay.
Did you just do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
No. I did the exact opposite. I did 100, 200, 300. Yeah, like, I mean, there's so much more context, right? Like, where are they physically? Are they, like, if you're trying to ground yourself in a toxic workplace, I'm sorry, that's going to be very hard. If you're trying to ground yourself while, like, if you have 10 deadlines due, you're trying to ground yourself, it is going to be doubly hard because you have all 10 equally due.
All 10 equally deep.
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me you're a person in marketing without telling me you're in marketing. Yeah.
So, like, I also feel that when you're looking at even like grounding in itself should be an activity that you prioritize, an activity that you make yourself do very presently, very mindfully. But I would say that I think the biggest thing people forget is being able to prioritize pockets of rest or pockets of grounding across the day.
Yeah.
Like now, I think without a 20-minute nap in the afternoon, I cannot function. As a human being, I cannot function without a 20-minute nap. So I know for a fact that if I do not nap in the afternoon, any meeting I have in the evening, any deadlines I have in the evening are out of the way. And it's one of those things, I think, of course, everyone has their own sleep schedules, their own productivity hours, their own, like, I mean, like, there are nights where I'm just coding and building things till 3 a.m. And there are nights where by like 8 o'clock at night, I'm just like, I've passed out, I'm just sleeping. Like, I think everyone, like she said, like, everyone knows what works out for them, but because you're not able to prioritize rest, prioritize grounding across your day or across your week, it becomes a thing of, okay, but now what do I do now?
I think you said it nicely, actually. Prioritize rest. I think that's really, like, even the best of trainers, actually the best trainers will recommend that you work out only for 5 days a week because your body needs those 2 days. Do not work out for 7 days a week. You cannot take that, and just because you can, don't. It'll be worse for you in the long run. So I think that's kind of interesting. Your brain, your body do need time to sort of reset, as it were, slow down and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
And for you, I think the context thing which you said, of course, made sense to me in the sense that for me, I am the happiest when I have to take less decisions. So I try to ritualize and routinize as much as I can. Because I am like, I don't want to think what should I do when I get up.
Yeah.
It's the same thing every day.
Decision fatigue is a thing.
Is a thing.
Is a thing, yes.
So I always feel that, I have to do this. Great, I'll just do this. I'm sure I can do other things that they could be better, who knows. But it just feels that I feel better if I have more or less many of these things planned out with some free time in between to do. But I think, it's a very context-specific, person-specific thing that
100%.
What helps you.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, at the context point, I also wanted to add that sometimes the present moment is not all that it's made out to be.
Yeah.
You know, when you're, like he said, if you are in a toxic home environment or a workplace, maybe being present feels unsafe.
Yeah.
I don't want to be present. I want to escape. So if your imagination is a way for you to escape, then that's also a valid coping mechanism.
For some people, however, an imagination actually brings more tension.
Absolutely. So really context matters.
I think another thing that has helped me in recent years, and this might be true more for 35 plus year olds, is that it's worth remembering that you have already been through and survived through a lot of shit in your life, right? Professionally, personally, everything. In fact, I welcome new shit that happens, which means that it's a good reference point for how you survive later. If you don't survive, then great. Then anyway, you're not going to be alive. Anything is to worry about it.
Watch point. It's a weird thing. This is...
Okay, very actualized.
This is not actualized. Hold on. Please don't give these times to your thought. Your idea of increasing time was to have more children. So the time in the world increases. So you are not actualized. Let me say this. You are self-aware. I will
create my new subscribers. I shouldn't be saying all this for it. a licensed therapist in the room, but anyway, I forget the point that I was going to make. No, but yeah, you've been through shit, right? And it's worth remembering that even though you're tense today, and this is like a mechanism that I've like developed for myself over the last few months, is that it's okay. You've been through much worse professional situations, at least before you've survived it. And it will happen right now. What's the worst that will happen? And sometimes I find that thinking through the worst case situation, at least for me, has been a tremendous coping mechanism. What is the worst that will happen? And sometimes, without getting too dark about it, take it to what the actual worst case situation will be, and you'll see that while it's not ideal, it's not. You can deal with it, and I think that is very liberating in some way, like dealing with the current situation. And sure, there are 4 possible bad outcomes that can happen. Great, you've already thought through them, so you're mentally prepared for them. And in some ways, you're even strategically prepared for them because you've already decided like kind of what to do. And this, in a very, very practical way, has translated to, for example, the way I manage my calendars. Before, it was very cut to cut, like, and I'll be tense about, what if the client gives feedback and like I have to redo an entire website, and I get tense about this. Like, okay, I will redo the entire website. I'm blocking off 5 hours just for that. Yeah. And if the feedback, if it doesn't happen, great, I'm going to use that time for something else. And I don't know, just thinking through the worst case scenarios helped me a lot cope. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And in fact, that's part of
I'm sure it is,
one of the therapeutic conversations that we have as well. Like, what's the worst case scenario for this? And let's think about how you might want to plan for it. Or think about how likely is it that it may actually happen. Maybe it's not that likely. And at the same time, I guess for some people, thinking of the worst case scenario almost stops them in their tracks.
Yeah.
So I think, figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, I think it is. Like, I know people from thinking about worst case just makes them even more tense. Sure, if it doesn't work, then sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think anything that helps you keep moving.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah, it shouldn't be crippling.
Yeah, exactly. Sense of progress, a sense of just helping you take the next imperfect step. Any technique or that helps you do that, I feel, is your go-to.
Yeah, even in content creation, we talk about
the same thing.
Take the smallest next step.
Yeah.
If it could just be, I will create logo for podcast. Yeah, that's a step. That's your one step closer.
Absolutely. And maybe your focus is just that. For some people, it helps to have a more larger focus with like the end goal in mind, the vision in mind. But for some people, that feels crippling. Yeah. So I just want to look at really like with horse blindness, what's the smallest step I can take?
Yeah. I think ultimately all of this, there are many techniques and all that, but ultimately everything's coming down to just, I won't say mindfulness necessarily, but just take a little bit of time out to think about how your software is wired in some way, right? Or not software is wired, I think software is coded, whatever. Like hardware is wired. Yeah? And what are your knobs, right? What are your like, in some way, sorry, I'm like, I've been trying to have a deep, meaningful conversation here.
I love the tech metaphors though, yeah.
Yeah.
But absolutely. I think taking time out to figure yourself out and
I think inside out, and I think like I'm still fascinated by you said 13 consoles. Like, what are your consoles? Who are your 5 emotions, or what are those? Like it's worth, like one thing I remember my therapist, which I found on the MindClan.com, thank you, said is whenever you're feeling a moment of high or low, take a moment to appreciate like what has exactly happened, how have things changed in your head, what has actually shifted when you're feeling a certain way and why. And if that moment comes again, how will you be prepared for it again? I may be paraphrasing, but essentially it works out something like that. So I think it's really, really about that. Why do I feel? And this now extends to everything in life. Like I said about how I listen to music right now, that made me feel euphoric, but why exactly? This was an underwhelming performance. I came all the way from Bombay to, from Pune to Bombay and to Phoenix, Market City, Kurla for that sound for Tesla. Like, anyway, and you said like, okay, like why am I not enjoying this? At the same time, I have been to gigs with worse sound, which I completely enjoyed. What made that difference over here? It's because I was with friends. Great. I should seek friends and not necessarily the headlining act. So I don't know. I think these things, the more you try to break down why you react positively or negatively to any situation. I think that is the way of finding whether you are a short-term thinker, long-term thinker, whether you're this person, that person, whether you want to do something for fun, whether you want to do something for commercial purpose. I don't know, I guess break things down would be my takeaway from this. Rescue me, please.
And change your milestones. I think that's one thing every content
Oh, 100%. Any person, change your milestones. Yeah. Ultimately, I think it's everybody is driven by this weird question. Like in your 20s, you want to all this cheesy stuff, but in your 30s, you're definitely driven by what gives you happiness. Yeah. What gives you happiness at the end of the day, right? Like what is satisfaction, happiness, whatever you want to call it, satisfaction.
No, right. I would actually make a very huge distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Where at least I feel that people think that happiness will give satisfaction, but actually satisfaction gives you happiness.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right? Because the thing is that when you seek satisfaction, you are saying this and whatever that this is for you, this is what I want to do. When you reach, then you're like, great, I reached there. I'm very happy. But the problem is the moment you set it there, your chances of getting here are much harder. So that happiness never happens. And if you wait for that happiness for the satisfaction to happen, satisfaction.
That hedonistic treadmill of emotions.
Yes, we know we did an MBA.
Thanks. When I asked you guys to come on, I said there are two things I want to discuss. One, can content creation be therapeutic purely personally? Forget commercial, forget what drives the algorithm, all that. I'm not interested. Can a person saying, I am stressed or whatever, I'm going to create something, doodle something, paint, whatever the case may be, will that make them feel better? Question number one. Question number two, chasing algorithm likes, etc. Can that lead to creator burnout, etc.? Second question, honestly, wasn't too. I mean, it's an obvious. I feel it's kind of obvious, and even the lay person kind of knows that right now. I think the first question has been reasonably well answered. Along the way, we've explored techniques that I think anyone, even if they're not looking to do a project or something like that, I think would be useful. So I would say overall we have covered a fair terrain. So
Yeah.
I would close this before I have the opportunity to make any more bad analogies. So, Utsav.
Yeah, no, I think thank you so much for, first of all, speaking with us. And we both have very, very limited understanding of the subject, right? So, first of all, apologies to both of you if we have messed this up in some form. But you have been kind enough not to point it out. Apart from
They're very nice people. That's one of the faults.
Apart from the horrible more babies creates more time, which I don't know, I will never get out of it.
Logic is perfect logic. If you don't believe this, I'll
right? No, but thank you, because all I'm saying is that even if there is one person who's going through something and who gets even anything, one thing out of it, my job here is done as someone who is able to just probably bring these conversations a little more out than they already are. And thank you again for being so patient with our ramblings, mine included, not just his. And thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
Of course.
thank you. That's
for
what
having us.
MindClan is a terrific resource. I am happy to recommend it to pretty much not everyone who is going through, but anyone in general. I think it's a topic that should be normalized. So I think you guys are doing a great job. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And you guys are doing a great job with 6% Club. So it's exciting to see what's in
In store.
Yes.
Thanks.